won't haunt you in.
Welcome back to the Talk Shop. This morning's edition brought to you by Perkins Restaurant and Bakery, Laramie Range Ford, and the fine folks at Range Community Insurance. We appreciate you listening to the Talk Shop. In Studio 255 at the Laramie Plains Civic Center, our in-studio guests, Brett Glass and Brandon Newman. Both here we'll talk first about closing our last segment. Brandon, you were talking about interaction with the community, and you had your name badge on, so you did so as Brandon Newman City Council member at March 19th, Albany County Town Hall, as you waited to enter the Phoenix Ballroom and then the Griffin Theater by change. Talk more about what you gained.
Yeah, just some experience of what some community members want council to focus on, with the parking questions. How can we bring maybe rails to help us with some things?
What's the rails conversation about?
Tell
me more about that.
They said Cheyenne's looking at implementing some passenger rails.
Okay, transport. Okay.
Right, transport, okay. And so they're gonna reach out to me, and I'll have a dialogue with them about that, and I'm actually excited for it to kind of see what could come from that.
I would have rather had rail going down Grand Avenue than the ice
cool.
cream,
right.
the ice cream dividers.
Yeah.
The ice cream mountain dividers.
Right. And then, kind of as I was leaving, some members of the community stopped me and talked to me, just thanking me for being there. And I thought that was kind of cool, just to, see that appreciation of they actually see some council members there, and I wasn't the only one. I know there were a few others. I think there were two others.
Did you have
maybe.
Quorum?
I don't think so. But we can have quorum as long as we don't talk.
Oh, okay.
So as long as there aren't a whole bunch of us together talking council business. So there could have been. I don't know. The only council member that I saw was Councilor Bowling, and I talked to him for a couple minutes. But
I saw Mayor Cumby.
I heard there were a couple others
following the deal. But
yeah.
So what do you pull from? What do you pull from Wednesday that we could do better in Laramie?
We could, I think, respect
or learn from.
Yeah, I think we could have had more dialogue, and we know as this community that they're not happy with some things happening in Washington. I'm not happy with some things.
Government trust high?
Yeah, no. No,
right,
and I say that all the time. I'm not a politician. I hate politicians for that reason, because they don't look. When somebody says, "Oh well, Harriet's coming," the very first thing is, "Oh well, what lies is she going to spew?" Right? Hey, Donald Trump's going to show up. Well, I don't want to go listen to his lies. Right? So
predetermined.
Right. But I think we could have been better with the communication aspect. I think the venue was a little bit better to organize. Not the venue was great. I think it held everybody. I don't think there was anybody out in the hallways.
Okay.
From my opinion,
about 500.
But, the sound systems, they didn't get a mic to ask questions till the last 20 minutes or something. It could have been a lot better. I think the crowd, we had frustrations. They could have expressed those frustrations, but then listened, and then we could have had more dialogue, more questions. But
Brett Glass, did you attend the Hageman visit?
I did not attend. I was considering attending, but they said that it was going to happen in the Phoenix Ballroom, which is a very small room right here on the second floor of the Laramie Plains Civic Center. And I realized that they were likely to be overflowing, and crowds were likely to be, if they held it there, crowds were likely to be pouring out into the street. It was going to be a madhouse. And so I figured I would not add to that crowd. I also felt, and it turned out to be true, that Harriet Hageman is in a rough position as a Republican congresswoman. She cannot effectively buck the party line that is coming out of the White House right now. Nobody is, and that's sad, but I did not expect her to say anything that was not absolutely in line with the party line. And, maybe in private, candid conversations.
She's elected by Wyoming.
Yeah.
Why do you feel that she's not able to buck? I don't feel that she's opposed to bucking if she believes that bucking is in her best interest. Or Wyoming's best interest. I don't know that necessarily is the case, but she did make some comments that didn't help the evening. And what was your observation with respect to that? And where'd you hear those comments?
Well, the number one comment that I saw when I reviewed the video of the event was when she said, "I don't understand why all of you folks are so obsessed with the federal government." And well, that is her job to be our representative there in Congress with the federal government. And so, of course, the people there were interested in what the federal government did. That's her remark was almost a non sequitur, and it's almost as if she really sort of wanted the public comment to go away. Now, here's how I would have, if I were Harriet Hageman. Here's how I would have handled the entire event. I wouldn't have just held the loud, short town hall. I would have brought my staff, and Mike Enzi used to do this some years ago, brought my staff and set up in some venue where we could have lots of small private conversations with citizens about the issues that concern them. And and then perhaps had maybe a little bit of a public speech or forum, and really and sat and talked to people and listened. This is something which I'm advocating the city council do, for its Fifth Tuesdays as well, because when you have to be there on the stage, just expressing the policy, the party line, you're producing output. You're not really getting that much input, and I think that was a flaw in the whole design of the way that evening was held. I think if Harriet really wanted to listen, and also if people wanted to express concerns about the way the federal government was doing things now, honestly, and not feel like not feel like these were going to necessarily hurt her politically, she would have had her staff take that input in a more quiet situation. So that's how I would have managed the whole event myself.
I'm pleased to have opportunity coming up to visit with Congresswoman Hageman again. And again, I will reiterate, inviting all of your questions, your concerns, and I've collected many.
Ask her if she's running for governor.
I've taken screenshots. I would have asked that last night. I would have asked that last Wednesday night.
Yeah, me too.
If I had gotten any impression that the room was at a different place than what the majority of vocal feedback and involvement represented. But I was really kind of just watching for the safety of neighbors and friends that were trying to ask their question. I wanted to hear what the questions were diligently. I had technical difficulties with the Talk Shop broadcasting it live, and I think that there was a wink from up above on that happening, because to have done so would have probably got me in Facebook jail for profanity and a number of other things, albeit another topic. But in any event, I'm happy she showed up. I do appreciate that she made that one stop of 23 counties. As I said with Klaus Hauptgut, that was organizing Gather for Good, which started 10 a.m., proceeded to a march 4 p.m. to get in line and be present with a number of city and county interested citizens, invested citizens, and I saw youngsters making signs and diligently coloring, and they were active and they were involved. And I talk about remember being young and being at the card table at your family gathering where the kids were in another spot.
Kid table.
The kids table.
Yeah.
Well, these youngsters were at the big kids table, and they were working so proudly. I loved it. I absolutely, genuinely appreciated that these youngsters were active. And what does that set the tone for their life? Well, right up until 6:30, to 7:30 on March 19th, I would have been very proud of all of the assembly, the structure, and the community-driven care that went into Gather for Good, followed by raucous representation and with agitators and people that their goal was not to do anything but to disrupt. And there were and that doesn't negate the serious questions that came to the front of the room that should have been heard clearly and should have been shared and answered. I think every one of those should have been answered. And I don't find, like with Donald Trump, President Trump says things in fashion that might a different word choice perhaps, but some people may scrutinize me for the same or likewise in some different topic some other day. But it's not sometimes what you say, but 2.5. What was it? 2 Men and a Baby. It's not what you say. It's the tone you use. It's how you say it. And hey, I am not anyone else but me, so I don't control what others do, but I do advocate for people to understand maybe this could help, maybe this might genuinely help this, but I wasn't booed from the moment I entered the room. I wasn't demeaned publicly and treated in a extremely unkind fashion. 2 wrongs don't make a right, folks. 5 wrongs, 500 participating, certainly changed the dynamic of a room. And I respect that Congresswoman Hageman came out. I respect that I've been granted conversation for an upcoming interview, and I will make the most of it for everybody possible. If you have questions or those concerns, email them to me, radioworks@mail.com, your opportunity to weigh in. And by all means, Congresswoman Hageman's email is publicly available, and I will make it even more available in weeks coming, leading up to that one-on-one interview. And I enjoyed her candidate awareness tour visit in 2024. That interview still available and archived in Facebook land for till the end of the month, and then it will go to another location because I will save it. But yeah, there's a lot of opportunity. Today's visit, without anything more about Hageman per se, we go into the preview for this week's City Council meeting tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. in 406 Ivinson City Council chamber. Brett?
Yes. Well, of course, Brandon here is wonderful to have a member of council here because he's obviously expert on this. This week's meeting of the City Council is not a meeting per se. It is a work session. And the topic of the work session is community partner funding. The city of Laramie is very generous. It gives a lot of money to community organizations, mostly nonprofits. Things like things like the library, ARC, Big Brothers Big Sisters, the Cathedral Home, all of these organizations that can use a little bit of extra funding. And most of these organizations are considered to be they really fall into 3 categories. There's quasi-governmental agencies like the library. There's social service agencies like Big Brothers Big Sisters, the Downtown Clinic, Interfaith Good Samaritan, some of the others that I just mentioned. And then there are ones that are come under the category of recreational arts and cultural agencies, like the Laramie Plays Museum, the Railroad Depot, and Relative Theatrics, which is a community theater group. And all of them apply to the city. You can find the applications on the City Council website. They ask for money, and the city gives them grants. And and City Council has a tough job of deciding who to give money to and how much.
What are the grant allowances, Brett? Is there any range specified or limits?
It varies a lot.
Okay.
It varies from hundreds to tens of thousands of dollars, depending on the organization.
Or less, right?
And here at in the summary, which is on the website, it basically says that the requested funding is $659,000. But in order to achieve the amount that the city really intends to spend, they can't allocate as much as everybody's asking for. To achieve the recommended amount that the staff has recommended to the council that they allocate, they have to cut that by about one third to $427,000.
$219,000 roughly.
They need to cut it by about 30% or so, and there's another category of community partners that they also fund, which they're really not going to discuss much tonight, although they probably should. And that is ones where they have the organizations which they pay fees for services to. That includes the Laramie Chamber Business Alliance and the Laramie Main Street Alliance, and also the airport, which is somewhat of its own business entity. And so they're not going to be discussing much about that tonight, although I see that
And it's not tonight, it's tomorrow night.
Sorry, tomorrow night. Yes, and you're correct. And it's and that also deserves a lot of consideration, because that's a big chunk of money. That's $250,000 right there for those three entities. There's not each one of these is sort of a unique agency of one kind or another. Their applications showing what they're asking for are all online, and then their sales pitches are all online. And so you can go online, you can see presentations that are recorded there. And again, all of these are pretty much nonprofit organizations. Most of them are public charities. They're 501c3s. And it probably is a good idea for, in terms of city policy, for them to require them to be 501c3s, so that you know that they are community service organizations. I've only spotted one that is not, and the city may want to revise this in the future, and that is the very last proposal on the list is for Tough Guys, the landscaping firm, and they do what they do is they do the winter light display.
Winter Light Festival.
That's right. And that's a very pretty thing. It's definitely a community service, but that's currently not organized as a nonprofit. They give the money to the company, and the company collects money from the city and from other places and does this. It's probably a good idea for their own sake for them to organize this as a nonprofit, and for the city to formally make a policy that it has to be a nonprofit before they give it a grant in this category. Because again, if they don't, then this may be counted as income for the company, which isn't good for the company. And also, it really should be managed as a separate entity from the company, and make sure that we're not that a company that the city gives money to is neither making a profit off of this or getting a loss from this. If it stands to profit from it, then it probably should hire it as a contractor. Shouldn't be part of this program at all. As for the entities that are specifically contracted with the chamber and Main Street and the airport, that's that again is all pretty good. I think we should make sure that we hold their feet to the fire. In particular, Main Street, we haven't heard much from them lately in terms of things that they're doing for the community, and we suddenly have a lot of vacant storefronts downtown. And so we may want to improve our contract with them to make sure that they're actually serving the community, that they're actually being responsive to the community. Businesses downtown don't hear much from them. But again, that's apparently not on the table for discussion tonight. So that's what's up. Yes.
Now that the legislative session has concluded for 2025, I think that you'll see that changing.
I hope so. Brandon, do you have any?
I would assume that, we'll see the
Executive
change.
Director Sherwood being representative.
Sherwood.
I think she'll surely be more available in the community representing Laramie Main Street Alliance in that regard. But that's another topic for conversation. But Brett, you mentioned your viewpoint on the funding of tough guys. I'm not a supporter of added bureaucracy if at all possible, and I think that the Welper family in operating Tough Guys are
Oh, they're great
they're
people. They're
diligent,
great people.
and I think that they've taken a leadership role, and I often think that if the community at large can take care of itself, government's not needed. And I don't necessarily disagree with anything you said. It's all your option is certainly a very clean and possible way to do it. But I also believe that in this case, Tough Guys, I have no reason to believe they're not doing it clean. And where you have income, you can have expense, and in a balance sheet situation that takes one washes the other on debits and credits, and I'm sure that they're more than capable to do what they're doing. And I give a kudos to the Winter Lights Festival as a whole production. I love it. I think your mention of its vibrance and pretty and that is a credit to what's going on. I don't care how it happens. I hope it continues. And any other points with respect to the work session as we go into comment?
Let me comment on that real
Brandon?
fast. The good thing about those guys is usually they're last when they present. And one of their very first comments, and I love these guys for this, and they do a great job, is we don't need the money, so give it to somebody else. But we as council always still give them something, right? But they recognize that there's a whole bunch of other nonprofits that we deal with. I think there's 38 of them on the list. Is that right? I can't remember off the top of my head.
Do a quick count.
To where they recognize, like, hey, we know we're probably a for-profit.
Yeah.
And these other guys, like, I think they call out the soup kitchen.
I wasn't invited. The talk shop wasn't invited, but we invite ourselves. Myself and I invite ourselves. I did a grand opening night coverage. I did multiple nights throughout the whole deal. UNIWYO's Federal Credit Union night presenting the University of Wyoming. I featured coaching interviews and so forth on the talk shop and I did it for public service because this is that type of engagement. It is that type of fantastic event that I'm proud to associate with. Whether I was invited or not, I participated, and guess what? Take that latitude. Nobody turned me away, so thank you for making me welcome as a member of the community and doing that. Brett, any other comments with respect to the work session ahead tomorrow night?
Well, not much else here. Again, there'll be opportunities for public comment both on the on where the grants go and also on anything that's not on the agenda. So that should again the most of the evening is going to be presentations from community organizations. So if you're interested in becoming aware of what's going on with community organizations in Laramie in general, this list, I see very few that I know of that aren't on the list. So it's a good opportunity.
You have maybe had your ears burning this morning as I mentioned your name and Brandon and I's discussion previous since 6 a.m. this morning. One such piece I'd love to follow up with you on is public comment period during regular sessions where the public has now an opportunity to suggest items be pulled from consent agenda or ask that it be discussed more in more depth. Is there any mention? What did it feel like to bring your concern to item 9G on the City Council consent agenda and have it declined 7-0 to 2 absent in that deliberation with no opportunity to pull it from the consent agenda?
Yes, well, this is what happened. At that last meeting, I asked that a particular item be pulled for discussion because of the details of the item. But the council has adopted a weird policy. They allow the public to ask for something to be pulled, but don't allow you to say why you think that. And as a result, I had some concerns about this item, but I didn't get a chance to express them because all I could do was say, I think that this item ought to be pulled for discussion. And I really couldn't say any more than that.
Well, if you were to have shared what you had, perhaps they would have made a different decision, right?
Perhaps. What I was concerned about was that the city was going to hire a consultant, an outside firm which really doesn't know all that much about Laramie, to handle issues in terms of aesthetics and the community's desires here in town. And there's several reasons why I'm concerned about that. First of all, we have organizations like Laramie Main Street that are charged with doing that, and we're already paying them. We're already paying Laramie Main Street the $65,000 to do things like this, and we were going to pay the consultant almost that much again to do something similar. There have been open houses on the topic of what to do with, and this is Third Street beautification was the topic that the consultants were being hired to discuss. We've already had open houses on this. We've already had forums on this. We have a city engineering staff and a city planning staff who are charged with dealing with issues like this. And what I was going to ask council to discuss was, why are we constantly hiring outside discussions to do outside consultants to do jobs that we've already hired other people to do? And even if they'd gone ahead with the hiring, I would have liked to hear that discussed, but it wasn't, and I didn't get a chance to voice my concerns because of the policy.
Knowing you the way that I've come to know you, I'm sure you wrote council at cityoflaramie.org with some of that feedback. Is that accurate?
Some, but not. It didn't reach everybody. Not everybody read it.
For sure. And the community
city council
gained from your comments as well.
City council doesn't gets a ton of email, and it can get lost. My comments on other items were recognized.
Did you feel valued in that moment?
I did not feel valued in that moment. I felt that that the council didn't value a member of the public's opinion without a lot more explanation.
It seemed like a bait and switch.
Yeah.
In advertising, we call that a bait and switch. We baited you with the presentation that we're going to listen to you. We're going to consider taking it off, and we did. We voted on it, and the only two not in favor of it were absent in that occasion. So I commend you on your follow up here. I think you've been quite fair to what I witnessed that night. Brandon, you have been quite fair in your detail of your consideration. You voted in favor of not considering it as well. Would you like to expand on a little bit about that, or leave that at this time?
No, so I directly afterwards, because it's technically not a vote. Nobody just pulled it, right? Right afterwards, I sent an email to Brett and wanted to, just curious why, because it seemed a pretty straightforward item, and maybe that's something that...
it only takes one to pull it off.
Right, it only takes one.
If one city council member would have agreed with your suggestion, then it could have been pulled off.
And it's more than, I think it's more... Main Street would be a great avenue, I think, to use this if they could put the resources in it. I don't know if they could. That's not a Brandon conversation, I guess. That's a Main Street conversation to have, to where they're gonna handle all those vendors and stuff, and city staff just gonna have the capacity to do that and everything else. So, but I did reach out as soon as I was like, I'm kind of curious on why, and Brett sent us an email, sent all of council an email on his concerns on that item, and then sent me one that says see previous emails. So I read his concerns, and they made sense. But Brett, we were talking about this earlier, so you know. I kind of, and this is going to sound super mean, and it's not that way, I kind of did it out of spite. Because the way that the policy is written is not how I presented it, because I wanted public comment, right? And then all of a sudden, now they still can't have public comment on why. Whether it's 3 minutes, it doesn't even need to be 3 minutes. 30 seconds of, here's my concerns. That's not a debate. That's telling us, have you thought of this, right? Or have you, here's why.
In retrospect, though, Brandon, wouldn't it have been more in line with your thinking to have said, "Thank you, Brett Glass. I would like this removed per Brett Glass's information. I would like to hear what he has to say, and I think that that this warrants the measure that we're taking." And then in that, you could have made even more elaborated comment with respect to, this is exactly why I'd like this type of consideration to be allowing for a comment to follow the request that gives 30 seconds to why, and this is exactly it.
I did it the exact opposite.
Yeah.
It both ways worked out on what my mind was thinking.
The ultimate effect is it'll
I'm
change perhaps coming forward.
Right. I am not a politician, so the proper way would have been to let Brett talk, right? Or to take that item off the table or off the consent. Let's put it on the regular agenda. I just did it the opposite way. To kind of, the same point was proven, right? That there needs to be some sort of discussion. Whether that goes forward, I was outvoted when this happened, right? I think there was only 2 of us, maybe. I don't remember the exact vote on public comment on consent items. I still like that idea too. We don't have to pull it. We can have a discussion about that, really. But I was just trying to prove that, like, this needs to happen. And whether, it's kind of a coin flip. Pull it off, talk about it then. I could have called point of order that I'm not talking about the actual item. So I just did it the exact opposite.
Brett,
So,
any follow-up as we move forward?
Well, yeah. Well, the thing about the consent agenda is that it is meant for things that just don't require any discussion. I mean, and
there's rules.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
And the danger of that is that things can be railroaded. We really have to watch for that. We don't want items to be railroaded through without discussion when they might need even a little bit, even 5 minutes of discussion. In this case, we're talking about hiring a contractor to do a visioning of 3rd Street, not even any actual construction, not any hiring of people, not any of the actual work, or even the engineering. And we were talking about more than $50,000 of taxpayer money to do that. It seemed to me that much money, anything that involves that much money, really should, it's really a stretch to put that on the consent agenda in the first place.
I think anything under 200 can go on consent, but I'm probably wrong on
there
the
is
number.
an upper limit, but the upper limit is so high.
Very high.
Yeah.
The other thing that I'd mention here is the city planning division for Laramie. In 2021, I think that there was Derek Taney and Mr. Cox, assistant city planner at that time. Maybe there was some staff beyond that, but that staff is now 6 times what it was in 2021, or roughly thereof. And that expansion, I would think they would own these type of developments internally, but
Yeah.
it's as a matter, city manager Jordan is very diligent about justification of time, and it seems that internally that group could have maybe performed that type of analysis or development internally, saved us $200,000 right then and there, or whatever the amount comes to, whatever
50, at least 50,000, and there's more to it than that even. We also have boards and commissions that can get involved and can help with this. I'm right now serving on the Traffic Safety Commission, which certainly is involved if we're going to be talking about modifications to streets. Planning and zoning would definitely want to have some input. And so we have, and maybe other boards and commissions would. So it seems to me that, we could do a lot of this in-house and not spend the money hiring outside consultants, which in my opinion anyway, the city does far too often. So this is something I would like to see. Perhaps the answer is to reduce the limit on things that can go on the consent agenda, the financial limit. But the other thing is, let people say a word or two, because I'm convinced that one or two people, one or two other members of council, not just Brandon, might have thought to pull it if they'd considered this, and it didn't look like just another item that was uncontroversial. No need for any discussion.
Right. Well, I appreciate you expanding on your viewpoint on that, and joining Brandon and I in our conversation regarding consent agenda item considerations. And Brandon, thank you for covering that. What else did you prepare? I know, Brandon, you've been getting texts actively through the course of our time together this morning. What other topics might people like us to weigh in on here on the Talk Shop?
Most of them we've been talking about, to be honest. Just Third Street. Third Street's a big one that we've been. Housing's another one. Obviously, we're always going to talk about housing, I think.
Let's go with housing right now.
Sure.
$142,000 plus derived from registration fees and so forth. And one particular case has come forward and was taken to court where an entity had not registered, and they were not the legal entity that were taken to court. The individual was taken to court. It turned out the LLC was the one withstanding. And do you expect that the city will take the LLC to task on whether they registered, or now that they've had compliance with the LLC registering, that might be circumvented as a matter of law?
I have no idea. I haven't heard. Yeah. The only thing I've heard about that, so I read the Laramie Reporters, where I read the court case and all that stuff, right? And then I reached out to city staff and wanted to know what we're doing going forward on that ordinance and what changes, just to kind of prepare myself for that.
What is the money derived from that program? Is it
just goes to the general fund?
Is it pooled for? It goes in the general fund, so it's not earmarked for anything directly relating to housing per se. Not
directly. I know it. If you read the budget thing when this passed, 2 years ago, I think, that some of the money from the general fund would go to like the city clerk's office, because they're spending the time with the.
They documented more than 500 hours.
Right. And then city attorney has time in it, city manager has some time in it, right? So that money was going to allocate their time in working with that.
What's the cost-benefit analysis that the city council has engaged in to evaluate whether or not the registration program is worth the investment, perhaps?
Well, I think that question was asked in an email a while ago. I think it was an email. Maybe it was a council meeting. I don't remember, but I think the overall was like, we're not making money, but we're not losing money at the current time, if I remember right. Now,
no additional staffing has been procured in order to fulfill this role, so it's been how it's being handled currently by those already employed.
And my comment still stands, and I will still say this probably until we change this ordinance to where it works out better. But I made the statement, and current council members said that my statement is wrong, but we're penalizing the good landlords right now, the ones who are actually following the policies, who have went and registered their rentals. I live in a rental right now. We're in the process of buying a house, but I live in a rental right now, and it's not registered. The house next to me isn't registered, and it's a rental. And now the fortunate part about it is my landlord's really great. Something breaks, they come and fix it. They don't live here in town. They live in. They have family that live in town. They bought a house down in Colorado, but their residence was the house that I live in now, and then moved down there. So there's still a lot with this.
So they could be charged with a crime in the city of Laramie for violation of ordinance, but they're doing a great job.
They're doing a fantastic job. Yeah.
Right. Brett, you had comment follow-up?
Oh, well, yes. If the city manager gave a presentation to council not too long ago about the enforcement of the rental housing ordinance, and essentially what they said was that, she said, and this is actually her pie charts, were that 50% of the complaints that came to the city about rentals were rejected outright. Of those, another 50% had never been addressed, never resolved in any way, either by direct negotiations between the tenants and the landlord or with the city interacting. And in total, the city had gotten involved in resolving only 21 complaints over 3 years. That's 7 a year. Does that really require hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of essentially taxes on every rental in Laramie?
500 hours quoted by City Manager Jordan on the dedication of existing staff time to this matter.
Yeah, there's so many loopholes in it, right? Some of the language was the resident still has to be a resident of that place. So if I had a problem with that landlord and I moved, well, they can't do anything now, right? So there's a lot of language that has, quote unquote, and I use this term all the time, loopholes that these people can find.
Yeah.
Whether it's the
and
landlord,
maybe they should find. The thing about data is that in this case, 500 quoted 500 hours, more than 500 hours of time, existing staff time dedicated to this function. To me, that with 20 at that same point in time, 21 incidents of relative involvement doesn't warrant that expansion of government.
My biggest question is, how's it helping housing?
Well, it's not. And I'm a member of a housing coalition which is talking through issues like this. And, one of the worst things you can do if you want to encourage something is overregulate it. It's driving away investment. I would not invest in another rental property in Laramie now because I'd be concerned about
your investment alone.
Exactly. Members of my family are looking at selling off properties. Some landlords in town, like the Bell family, are in the process of selling off all of their rentals. So it makes the problems with housing worse, not better. And that's a big concern. The other question I have is, maybe the city needs to look seriously at improving its legal staff, because they spent some good chunk of those 500 hours suing the wrong legal entity. And obviously, they should have checked the ownership records with the county, which anyone can do, and seen that the units for which they sued Arsenio Lemus, who was the landlord in question, were not owned directly by him, but were owned by a corporation. And by an LLC of his, and that's just I don't know. It seems to me that's
legal
civil law 101. They should have done that way before they got to court. And so I think we need to look at into how this is done legally as well, and whether it's worth all the trouble, given the lack of results so far. The state law already protects tenants and does a better job of doing it in terms of just not having loopholes. And we have right here next to City Hall, we have a circuit court which is very willing to crack down on a bad landlord. So maybe, considering that our funding is going to be cut by the cuts in property taxes, we should leave this to the county and the state.
We have in Studio 255 at the Laramie Plains Civic Center, Brett Glass with our City Council preview, and Brandon Newman, City Council member for Ward 2, in our presence today. Thank you both, and we will be back in a moment with closing topics on City of Laramie operations with Brett Glass and Brandon Newman, our guests here today on the Talk Shop, brought to you in part by the Ben Rusty, 308 South 2nd in historic downtown Laramie, and Together We Can. That speaking engagement bringing Lieutenant Alan West, 22-year military veteran, to Laramie, Wyoming, and Lodge 582. That's the Elks Lodge 582, and that's a 6 p.m. engagement at 103 South 2nd Street. If you would like tickets for that event, contact the Talk Shop, 307-460-3087, or email radioworks@mail.com.